because I know that there are several people that couldn't be here this evening. I know a few schools in Lawrence Township had back to school night. And so we have recorded this and it will be available for later also. Also, I just wanted to remind you to mute yourself. There is a little microphone in the bottom left-hand corner. And if you just make sure that you've got the little, it's red, it's got the little line through it. If you could mute yourself, that would be great, because sometimes I get back noise and I can mute you too. So if that is an issue, no worries. So I think we're going to begin, because I really want to be respectful of your time. And probably like all of you, I was just feeding animals and I have a laundry basket right outside this door. I had to quickly shut the door before I turned on my camera. So I want to, again, thank you. I am a professor at Butler University. I teach undergrad and graduate students, although this year, my schedule is a little bit different. I'm just teaching graduate students, but I'm also teaching in Lawrence Township a morning and an afternoon, or 2 mornings a week at Harrison Hill. And I'm having just an incredible, I've been there 4 weeks. So I'm with 3rd and 4th grade. And I'm a former special education teacher. I taught children with a classification of behavior disordered, emotionally disturbed, but I also was a school counselor in Wayne Township, and I taught at Marian University for about 8 years, 7.5 years. And I've been at Butler for, this is starting my 5th year. I just can't even believe it. I don't know where time goes. So tonight, this is for parents, it's for teachers, it's for caregivers and grandparents and guardians. I mean, if you sit beside children in any way, this next hour and a half is for you. And I want to give a huge thank you to Dana for setting this up this evening. And also just such gratitude to Lawrence Township for allowing me to sit beside this district and work with your children and work with the educators in this upcoming school year. So with that being said, I am going to, also please feel free to, if you want to ask a question or make a comment, there's a little chat box at the bottom. And so feel free to use that. And I will make sure tonight that I will leave some time for questions. And if you like this tonight, what I'd love to do is to do this with you. I mean, I'd love to keep this ongoing. So if this is something you really enjoyed tonight, just, please know that this doesn't have to be the last time. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and please make sure you're muted.
¿Lo ves?
I think, let me see. I think we've got a couple of people that are still needing to mute themselves because we can hear your background. So just hit the microphone.
Yo necesito bajar eso.
Hold on 1 second. I'm going to go ahead and mute. Okay, I think we're good. So just make sure you are muted. And then I'm going to go ahead and begin. I've got a little PowerPoint here that I'm going to share with you. And if you would like to take a picture of any of these slides, that's absolutely fine with me. So if this is something you really want to look at again, we'll have a recording of this, but feel free to take pictures of any of these slides. So tonight I'm coming to you as I'm putting on my mom hat. I'm coming to you as a parent tonight. Even though I am a teacher and I'm a school counselor, I'm talking to you from a parent perspective this evening. And I want to begin with this quote, which is, it's just so true for all of us as parents and as educators. The child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. And I want to begin tonight by sharing this with you. Every parent is doing the best that they can. There is not there's not a parent or caregiver or guardian that is not absolutely doing the very best that they can in the moment. So I thank you and I honor you tonight because you're here and it shows that you're wanting to learn. And I can tell you very honestly that I would have been a very different mom to my 3 children who are right here. They are in their 20s now. And I picked really kind of fun pictures tonight. Over here to the left is my youngest daughter, Reagan. And all 3 of my children are Lawrence Township graduates. They all went to Lawrence Central High School, including my son-in-law, Matt. So I love Lawrence Township. I feel that I'm at home this evening. And I know I would have been a very different mom had I known what I know today when Andrew, Sarah, and Reagan were younger. So I hope to share, and I still am parenting. You always are a parent. So I'm parenting them in ways right now that are really brain aligned. And I'm going to talk with you about that. But I hope after tonight, when we say goodbye to each other, that you're not only thinking about your children, you're thinking about your own lives. Because this framework that I'm going to share with you tonight is just as much about you as a person, as a parent, as a sibling, as a partner in a relationship. It's as much about you as it is about your parenting. So anyway, these are my 3. And I learn from each of them every single day. So I want to begin tonight by sharing something again I wish I would have known. The brain develops in our children, and it develops when we have these 2 conditions. And I want to share this with you tonight. It's so important. We know that a child needs to feel safe in all moments for that brain to develop well, and the child needs to feel connected and needs to feel felt. So as we move through this presentation tonight, I want you to think about how the brain develops. It develops from the very back to the front and from the inside out. And so when we think about our brains, we all need to feel safe and we all need to feel connected. And if we don't, it's hard for us to parent well. It's hard for us to learn. It's hard for our children to learn. And it's hard for us to live well. So these conditions, safety and connection, are critical for our own emotional and mental and physiological well-being. So think about that tonight as we talk about parenting in this time, because so many of us right now are parenting. We have kids at home who are doing virtual learning. We're working a job. Maybe we've lost our job. Maybe we are not feeling safe in our environments right now. Maybe we're feeling disconnected or isolated. So COVID-19 has literally shone a light on these 2 conditions that really are hard for the brain and body to take. So again, if you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling worried right now, or you're going through some depression, that is completely normal, because COVID-19 has literally put us in an environment where we don't feel safe a lot of the time, and we do feel isolated. So as we talk tonight, make sure that you're muted, because we can still hear noise. So make sure in your box that the microphone has a red line through it. And I can actually, Dana, are you on right now? Can you hear me? What I may do is, see, Dana, can you hear me? I may try, let me see if I can. I'm looking to see, I'm so sorry, you guys. I'm getting back noise, so just make sure that you are muted.
Hey, Lori, it's Trish
Yeah.
Weiss. It's
Yeah.
Trish Weiss.
Hi, Trish.
If you want to make me a co-host, I can chat with the people
Yeah,
that
let
have their
me,
mics on.
okay, let me do that, because I thought, give me just a second and I will
Okay.
go. and put you as a co-host, Trish. Thank you
Okay.
so much. Hold on,
You're welcome.
everybody. I just, when the mic is, what is your name on the screen, Trish? Hold on, guys, 1 second. Trish, what is your screen name?
Patricia Weiss.
Patricia, okay, let me see. There it is, okay, let me, and I am going to, okay, you should be able to co-host, Trish. Thank you so much. Okay, so we're gonna keep going. Thank you, Trish.
You are very welcome.
Okay, so we'll keep going here. So what I want to share briefly with you tonight is really good news for us as parents. There was a study done about 30 years ago, and in this study, what they found is that adversity in our lives really affects the way we feel. It affects our thinking. And in this study, what they found is that when COVID happened in this time, there are 3 conditions that COVID literally produced that are hard on all of us, and they align with the adverse childhood experience study. And this is really important for us as parents to understand, because when you as a parent or grandparent went through trauma in your own life, and when you had adversity in your life, it actually it is generational, and it can affect your own health, and it affects your own well-being. So COVID, these 3 conditions that I've listed here, this is what we're all experiencing right now. And the first condition is chronic unpredictability. Our brains and bodies need routine. We absolutely have to have structure. So we wake up in the mornings, and sometimes we don't know what that day is going to bring. And that's very hard when children and when adolescents are waking up and they don't know what's going to happen next. Then it's hard on that developing brain and body. Isolation is another condition that so, and then I think I was muted just for a second, but I think I'm back. So isolation, and then emotional and physical restraint. And so when these conditions happen in our lives, it's extremely, extremely hard for us to go to work, to think, to live well, and it affects our health. So I want to talk to you just a little bit about what trauma and adversity are tonight. And when any of us are feeling trauma or adversity, there is body overwhelm. It hits us in our bodies. We get stomach aches, we get headaches, we sometimes feel sweaty. The information in our world is coming in too fast and too soon. And so when we know what we know about trauma, it's not just about the brain, it's about our bodies. And we feel that in our bellies, in our chests, and we feel it, also in our brains. So we have this beautiful nervous system that has really shone a light on how well we can live life. But when we have body overwhelm and there's too much, too fast, too soon of information coming in, then our nervous system reprograms itself, and it's hard on us. So I want you to think about this tonight. Sometimes our children will tell us how they're feeling through their body and not their words. So I want you to really think about that. Sometimes you can see in a child's facial expression, in their posture, in their tone of voice. It's the same with us. We can see how our children feel when we observe them. And that is because sometimes the things that happen to us land in our bodies. So our brains are grown by how we feel and how we think. And in trauma, we go from a stress response system that is working really, really well to one that is very health damaging. And we know that one of the things we all need in life is to feel felt and to feel connected. So I'm gonna skip through some of these. Feel free to take pictures of any of these slides, but I am gonna just kind of skip through a few of these slides. And I want you to think about this one. This is really, really important. This is, what if we were allowing silence just to be a part of how we parented? I so wish I would have done this with Andrew and Sarah and Reagan. What if I had taken 3 deep breaths when I was upset? And what if I had walked away? And what if I had gotten a sip of water? And what if I had just gone quiet and shared my calm quiet with my children before I started lecturing or threatening or yelling or nagging? And that's something I'm going to talk a little bit more tonight about. And I love what Dr. Steve Porges says. He says, we need to understand that we wear our hearts on our faces and in our voices. So I think for me as a mom, one of the most important gifts I can give my child is my calm, is my ability to share my calm presence with that child. And it oftentimes is not with words. It's holding a safe and a warm and a stable, responsive space for my child to get calm. So as we think about the brain tonight, it's really exciting research. And we know that our brains develop from the very back to the front. And we all have a brain for 3 reasons. So think about these 3 purposes for a brain. We have a brain for safety. So this is survival. All of us pay attention to everything around us if it feels threatening or unsafe or unfamiliar. And the language of the brainstem is sensation, it's safety. And then we have a brain, then the limbic system of the brain is the emotional brain, and that's for feeling. So we have to feel safe and we have to feel connected before we can use this part of the brain, which is called the prefrontal cortex. And this is what we are teaching 3rd and 4th graders right now. The students that I've been working with at Harrison Hill know their prefrontal cortex, they know their amygdala, which is the limbic system, and they know what happens in the brainstem. So this is, we share this with our students, and we're teaching them that when you are upset, when you are angry or worried or anxious, you have these 2 almond-shaped structures right above your ears. And right above your ears in that part of the brain, when they fire and they are literally activated, then your prefrontal cortex shuts down and you're not able to think clearly. How many of you have been so stressed before, you've been late for work or you can't find something, or you're running around like crazy and you can't think clearly? And there's a reason for that. Anytime we are feeling stressed, this green part of this brain, the prefrontal cortex, begins to shut down. And so this is something that is really important. I so wish I had known this as a mom, because I think I was trying to discipline my kids when they were down here in that amygdala, when they were not hearing my words. So I'm going to skip a couple of these. I want to give you a practice, a strategy, and you can all do this right now. If you have a piece of paper and a pen, this is something we did today in 4th grade. We know that the language of our brainstem and the lower parts of the brain is sensation. And that's different than feeling. Sensation are these words in the clouds. So how many of you tonight, think about this, feel tired or tense or teary, or maybe you feel open, or maybe you feel jittery or numb or shaky, or you feel full or empty, or hot. So these words we have our children draw. And so what I want you to do right now is I want you to get a sheet of paper and maybe pick a sensation, and I'd love for you to give it a shape, give it a size, maybe what color would it be, and where do you feel it on your body? Because what we know is when you can name a sensation, when you can name a feeling, you actually calm your nervous system. So if maybe some of you are feeling edgy or tired tonight, what would your tired look like? What would tense look like? What would stuffy look like? So go ahead and just take a minute and just draw it, give it a shape, give it a size, give it a color. And so I would, if anybody would like to unmute yourself for a second and maybe share what you drew, or maybe you just thought of something that, you know, how you were sensing in your body, you know, tonight. Would anyone like to share? We always, and we do this with the kids, they share their pictures, they share, or sometimes they won't even want to draw, they'll just share how they're feeling or how they're sensing. Would anyone like to? And that's okay.
I can share.
Thank you.
Sure. Well, the first thing that came to mind was tired.
Yeah.
And I wrote it out, and surprisingly, I just put like it in a tight square is how I like immediately thought, and I drew it red.
Yeah. And you know, thank you so much for sharing that. And again, I think our kids today, when we were sharing sensations, I mean, they could tell, I mean, it was so much better than even feelings, because they could show me what empty, like if they said empty or teary, I mean, they actually drew it just like you did. And I love that image of a tight square. So this is something you can do at home with kids, you know, when they're just feeling out of sorts, and when they're feeling rough, you know, that's something that can just actually distract and calm them. This is a great thing to do before bedtime, you know, or, you know, just, and even as a family, maybe even sharing how you're feeling at that point and being honest with them, because you're tired right now, you're overwhelmed, you know, and you're feeling tense. So we would have had a sensation word wall in our kitchen. I think I would have put up those words, or I would have had a jar with all of those words in there. And I think I would have given that as a choice, you know, and said, you know, if you want to write it out, that would be great, or draw it out. So I'm going to go ahead and share some, we'll be sharing some more practices, and I will answer your questions. I promise you I will. I'm going to save plenty of time at the end, because I know that you've got, I saw some questions come in. So what I want to show you next, these are some of the sensations that the kids picked out today. Feeling stuck. How many of you feel stuck right now? Or you get that butterfly feeling in your stomach. Maybe you're feeling warm, or you're just feeling icy cold. So when you can name it, you can tame it. And what's shareable is bearable. We know that anytime you draw, or you doodle, or you can just color, it is calming to the nervous system. And I didn't know that. We would have done this in our home so much, I mean, just much more often. And one of the teachers shared with me that this student drew a picture of his brain running on a treadmill. And this was from another school district. I think it was out of state. And he was able to show he felt like his brain couldn't get off the treadmill, and he was feeling scared being back in his classroom during COVID, wearing masks. He felt nervous. And so he shared that to calm himself, he would just lay down when he got home from school, and he would just wrap up in a blanket. So he was able to draw that And that's, something that we can do sometimes, because sometimes our kids don't have the words to really share with us how they feel. I want to talk to you about generational trauma, and as parents, we need to understand this. So right now, and when I was at Marian University and even at Butler a couple of years ago, we knew the research was showing that trauma could be carried 4 generations. And now that is going back to 14 generations. And something that I want to share with everybody tonight that I'm learning every single day is that children, babies, fetuses in the womb are learning, and they can remember, and they can feel and sense their environments even in that last trimester when they are growing in a mama's belly. So we know that cortisol, which is a stress hormone, and adrenaline can cross the placenta. So when we are stressed, when we're pregnant, when we're going through a hard time, then that can be, that can be felt by our children, even in utero. But the good news is this: when you are aware of the stress, when you can understand there's a reason you feel this way, there's a reason you have anxiety, there's a reason you feel depressed, or you're going through a hard time, to know that is calming to the brain and body. So we can begin our lives either in a brain and body state of growth, or we begin our lives in protection. And so many of us, because of our experiences in our life, are really defending and protecting ourselves a lot of the time. And what we now understand is that racial trauma, generational trauma, historical trauma, looking at systemic trauma of racism. Dr. Resmaa Menakem has written a book called My Grandmother's Hands that I'm teaching right now in our Butler course. And he talks about white body trauma and black and brown body trauma, and how that trauma, white body trauma, is 1,000 years old. And that white body trauma, 1,000 years ago, after the fall of the Roman Empire, 2 million white bodies were brutalized, and those bodies came to the United States and started enslaving and brutalizing black body and brown bodies. And that trauma is alive, that racism is alive in our bodies today. And that's why it's going to take all of us to realize that it's much more than talking about racism. We've got to understand how it's embedded in our history. And so this is something that that we are constantly and right now thinking about, because the generational trauma of communities and nations and our world is a part of who we are today. And so as we move and understand, knowing that that is happening, and knowing that there's a reason that you're feeling the fear and the anxiety, can be calming to you. So as we think about historical and intergenerational trauma, I want to share this with you. Bodies don't care about logic or words. The language of our body is safety and survival. And it's true for our children. When you are functioning in survival, you can't pay attention. You can't think about schoolwork. You can't listen well. And so when we're functioning from survival, we've got to meet our children where they are, and we've got to share a calm and help them to get calm so that they can get to the thinking part of the brain. And so this is something that we're going to be talking about a lot at Harrison Hill with the students this year. And one of the best things you can do at home is to have children maybe create a poster, or in our house, in our basement, we just had this old wall, and we would let the kids just write on the wall. They could draw pictures, you know, on the wall. It was just in the unfinished part of the basement. You could do it anywhere. But we have our kids share their drawings, some poems, some lyrics to songs, pictures, and they're sharing how COVID has felt to them. And so this is like a graffiti wall, and this could be something you could so easily do at home. This would be something that you know, the kids could do in their free time, or maybe after school, or if they're doing virtual learning. But it's a great way to really check in with each other. And I think we're doing this in the classroom, but I think it would be a great thing to do as a family. So some of the questions that we're using for the wall, and these would be great questions to share with students and also parents, just to have that talk with your students during this time. So how has the virus of COVID affected me and my family? And a lot of times kids will feel comfortable maybe journaling it or just drawing it. Where do I feel in my body COVID-19? I know for me personally, since all this started happening in March, my stomach feels it. You know, I can feel it in my belly, my digestive system. What does the virus look like to you? If you were to draw this virus, what color would it be? What shape would it be? What are the lines of it? What have been the hardest parts of being isolated at home for 6 months? What were the hardest parts as a parent or as a child? Maybe these are questions we put to our children. What's been the hardest part about school returning for you as a family? You know, as a parent, what has your worry been like, and what has your fear been like, and how have you juggled this schedule that's been almost impossible? What has been the best part, or what was the best part of being at home during those 6 months? And this is something I want you all to think about tonight. What have been your strengths in this time? What have you learned from being at home? What's been challenging? What's been positive? What's felt safe to you or unsafe? And what's been painful, and what's made you happy? And you can even think about not just being at home, but as we transition back into school when our cases keep going up. So these are some of the questions that you could use for a graffiti wall. And so this is what we're talking about tonight. And it's a framework. And again, this is for parents. I would have been using this at home. These were my students last year. And these were my 5th and 6th grade students in IPS. And the framework that we're talking about has 4 pillars. And it's about educator brain. So it's about me as a parent. What's my brain and body state? It's about sharing my calm, co-regulation. It's about touch points, because we know our kids, when they are feeling rough, it's sometimes hard to be with them. And so touch points are moments of connection. And then we're teaching our students about their amygdala. We're teaching them about the prefrontal cortex. It's really very, very exciting, because when kids know the science because of why they feel the way they do, it empowers them, and it also relieves them. They know I'm not a bad kid, and they know there's nothing wrong with me. My brain has learned how to fire and wire this way. So I have control and power over my own brain. And that's what we're teaching the students in school right now. So as you think tonight about your own home, I want you to really think about, and then we'll take a stretch break after this, because this is a lot of talking at you, and I'll answer a couple of questions too. But this shows the prefrontal cortex right here. This is the part of brain that doesn't finish developing till we're almost 30 years old. And this is where we do school, and this is where we do life, really. This is where we think and where we pay attention, and it's where we can create a pause. We can, you know, hesitate before we say something we'll regret. And then this is the area of the brain. This is the feeling part of the brain, the amygdala. And this is the part of the brain that when we feel angry, when we feel worried, when we feel anxious, this part of the brain right here is activated and it fires and it shuts down the prefrontal cortex. So everything I'm talking with you about tonight, these practices that I'm going to share with you, these are a part of your routines at home. So thinking about your routines at home, how can you start the day or end the day with your children, giving them some predictability, because we need predictability. We need to know when this is going to happen, and we need to know what's going to happen after, after school. We need to know who's going to be there as much as we can. And that's something that we are working with in the schools. So think about a time when you've had an injury, a back injury, a knee injury, a shoulder injury, and that area on your body has inflammation. It's inflamed. It's swollen. It's painful. You don't have much mobility. The same thing can happen in our brains. And we thought the brain, up until a few years ago, was immune to inflammation. But this part of the brain right here, where you see the red, this is the amygdala, the right centric area of the brain. And when we are chronically living in stress, when we are constantly feeling anxious and worried, and we are 24/7, this part of the brain is constantly activated, and it becomes inflamed. And so when this happens with our children, it's harder on their brains because their brains and bodies are developing. So the practices, after we do a stretch in a minute, are going to be some practices that, and again, I've shared a couple, but some of the things that we can do at home with our children. So I want to show you one more slide, and then we'll take a stretch break here. This is probably the most important thing I'm going to share with you tonight, and this is brand new research. So inside of our ears, there's a little tiny muscle called the stapedius muscle. And this muscle is there, it's less than a millimeter, and it's there to protect us. And this is true for adults too. This is true for us. So when we are stressed, when we are angry, when we are in survival brain, that muscle in our ear expands and we hear everything around us. And what happens is we can't pay attention to somebody who is disciplining us. We can't pay attention to a conversation. When that muscle expands, we hear everything, and we are only looking at what feels safe, what is threatening us. And that's why kids will put their hands over their ears, or they'll run out of the room, or they'll scream when they are angry and you're giving them a consequence. That's why we never give consequences. And I wish I had known this as a mom. I didn't know this. When we are yelling and nagging and threatening kids when they are in survival state, they don't hear us. I mean, I cannot think of all the times I was disciplining Andrew, our son, and he was never, ever listening. And so when we're calm, that little muscle constricts and we can focus on a conversation. When that little muscle returns to its normal shape, then we can focus. And so paying attention is not a choice. And this is something we're teaching teachers in school, because oftentimes kids get in trouble because they look like they're not paying attention, or they might be putting their heads down or their hoods over their head when they're angry, or covering their ears, or running out of the room. And what we need to understand is there's a neurobiological reason that we can't pay attention when we are rough, when we are stressed. So this is a lot of sitting and a lot of talking. Get a sip of water, stand up and stretch. I'm going to look at your questions and I'll answer a couple of questions, but this is too much. I would love for you to move around a little bit, because this is a lot sitting in front of a camera. And I'll look at the questions right now.
Screaming.
I mean, you don't have to. No.
So I do want to share, some of this is in Spanish and I don't know Spanish. And I wish my daughter Reagan were here with me because she would be able to.
I speak Spanish. If is there a question that we can read, and I can translate it for you?
It's in the chat. So if you want to look in the chat. And while you're looking at that, I do want to answer, so knowing that trauma can live in DNA for at least 3 generations and longer. So this is, how do you think the stress and trauma of the pandemic impacts African Americans who are still dealing with the effects of slavery and Jim Crow? And it absolutely is a layering of trauma. It's trauma upon trauma upon trauma. And we know that COVID has hit the Black and brown population harder. And so this is talking about historical and generational trauma. Do you think this is another reason African Americans are disproportionately affected by the virus and other factors of the pandemic? A huge absolute yes to that. And I want to share with you tonight, please go online and look up my grandmother's hands. Resma Medicum is a trauma therapist out of Minneapolis, and I'm learning so much from him. He talks about exactly this question. He talks about the historical effects of Jim Crow and this intergenerational trauma, and it's just amazing. So yeah, thank you so much. Is it Amani? Did I pronounce that right? Thank you. Okay, good. I think we're all muted. And so thank you, Trish, for that too. So we're going to go ahead and continue because I have so much more I want to share with you. And now that we're muted, I do want you to understand that trauma is not psychological. It's trauma is a nervous system challenge. And so many of the behaviors of our children, are about trauma and adversity. And they are, because remember, all behaviors are signals. All behaviors are communication. And so this is, a child's behavior is sharing their pain. And this is really important to know. As parents, it's important to know. And as teachers, it's important to know. And so we've got to understand what's beneath the behavior before we address it. So some of these practices that I'll be sharing tonight go through this. I'm going to share the PowerPoint again. And I will go back. Somebody asked me to go back to the slide with the question. So let me do that before I get too far ahead. I think, Keston, that was you. Oh, here it is. I think this is one. So if you want to take a picture of these are great to discuss as a family. They're great to discuss with students. Add to these questions about what does it feel like now returning to school? What are your fears? What are your worries? What are your anxieties? So please take a picture of any of these slides tonight. And we're going to keep going. This is fascinating research. And I've got to tell you that what we are learning today is our belly brain and our heart brain and our skull brain are interconnected. There is a bi-directional highway. So our association with mealtime, our early in utero, our mother's brain and body state, and then when we came into the world, if our nourishment needs were met consistently, that has an effect on the emotional brain. So what I'm saying is how we perceive food, how we look at relational nurturance is connected to sometimes our emotional nurturance. So we know that in our bellies, and we didn't know this a few years ago, 90 to 95% of serotonin, which is our body's master neurohormone. It's responsible for us feeling calm and peaceful. So that is literally created mostly in our bellies. And the language of the belly is sensation. So we talked about this in school today. We talked about how your tummy is grumbling or rumbling, or it's got butterflies, or it's gurgling. And that is sometimes connected to how we feel. So our relationship with mealtime and food is connected oftentimes to our our other parts, of our body. So food and relational nurturance are built into the brain and body systems, and very important for us to think about. What I want to share with you this evening, this is probably one of the most important slides that I can give to you. And this on the left shows an adult brain, and on the right shows a child's. And so what we now are learning from research, that a calm, regulated adult can regulate an anxious child. But if I'm rough and if I'm dysregulated, I can never regulate my child. We know that oftentimes, and it's so hard, emotions are contagious. And we know that we can find ourselves in the heat of the moment, in a conflict, in a power struggle with our own kids, and we don't mean to be. But what I want to share with you tonight is that when you are paying attention and taking care of your brain and body, getting a drink of water, taking a walk, getting some air, giving yourself some space, and stepping away to calm yourself before you discipline, this is going to not only be helpful to the discipline process, but you're modeling for your children, because kids will do as we do. So when we are yelling, which I've done 1,000 million times, and we're threatening and nagging, then that's what our kids will do, because the brain develops from one main ingredient, and that one main ingredient is experience. If you grow up in an environment and no one is kind to each other, you do not develop the circuits in the brain for kindness. If you grow up in an environment where no one is taking a pause or calming before they react, then you don't know how to regulate. You don't know how to emotionally pause. So these skills are taught by all of us. And it's not just about parents, it's about all of us who sit beside coaches, ministers of churches, teachers, staff, it's aunts, uncles. It's about all of us working together. So I want to share a couple of, this is really, really exciting research. And I'm going to give you a few ways that you can calm yourself before, when you, and this is for you only, parents. I mean, this is for you guys tonight. Now, some of these you could do with kids too, but this is really for you to think about. When you shower, taking a cold shower for the last 30 seconds. So just after your shower, just turning on cold water for 30 seconds, literally calms the nervous system. It can lower your heart rate, lower your blood pressure, and lower your respiration. Putting an ice pack on your head as you fall asleep. And this is good for kids too. I mean, our children, this would be great to share with children. Or putting it on the back of our neck. Or if we're just feeling so overwhelmed, if, just splashing our face with cold water. We know that taking 3 to 10 deep breaths with a long extended exhale can activate the nervous system again. It's called the parasympathetic pathway, and it can calm us. Taking a brief walk, even if it's 5 minutes, if you are feeling rough or anxious and you're feeling like you just can't take it, you're in that fight flight, then taking a walk, humming to yourself is calming to the nervous system. Gargling with water, literally every time, like I have my bottle of water here, and I literally try to gargle the water, just every bottle that I have, a few times a day. And so we know that a foot massage, just giving yourself before you go to sleep at night, just, you know, giving yourself a foot massage is extremely calming to the nervous system. Put your finger on your Adam's apple and then put your other finger to the right on your throat. And right here to the right of your Adam's apple, if you massage this area right here, this can actually activate the parasympathetic nervous system. Go ahead and just, it doesn't feel sometimes so good, but if you rub this part, even on your child when they're, you know, if they're feeling upset, but even doing this to yourself can calm you. And so this is, it actually puts a brake on what we call this vagus nerve. And this vagus nerve it connects our bellies to our hearts and to our brain stem. And sometimes we need to slow that information down so that our nervous system can feel calm and all of our body reactions can get calm too. So this is really, really important. And we are teaching this to our kids. I would have had this chart at home when my kids were in high school. We have another one for younger children. So even our little ones, like first grade, this would be so great to make a poster size of this and just put it, and I can send this to you. So down in this green area, down here is, put your hand on your forehead right here. So when you put your hand on your forehead, this is the prefrontal cortex, and this is when you're calm. This is when you're functioning and you're literally, you can think clearly. And I'm going to go back to the other one because it describes it a little bit better. So down here, you're feeling open, you're feeling peaceful. And you can see this squiggly line right here. This squiggly line that's where most of us function. But if you start to feel worried or anxious or annoyed or irritated, then this is what we call fight-flight response. And that's where your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure goes up, your respiration goes up. And then we can't think clearly. And we are feeling anger and panic and rage. And then the frozen pathway is where this is another survival pathway. And this one concerns me with our children. This is when we see children really shut down. They're not acting out, but they're acting in. There's a lot of shame that lives up here. We see addiction beginning sometimes in adolescence. Children are kind of feeling numb. In school, sometimes we see them just with their hoods over their head, heads down on their desk. They are absent, lots of absences. They may feel not turning in work. So this is another survival response, but it's a different pathway. Fight flight is the defending pathway. It's where our blood pressure goes up and our respiration goes up. But the frozen pathway is where we begin to shut down to conserve energy. So we do this for younger children too. We have this, we share this. So here's what the kids do. They have, and I don't know if you can see this, I don't have my brain here, but today at Harrison Hill, we made bellies and we had hearts and then we have brains. And so the kids, when they come in, they are going to put their brain on the area where they're feeling. So some of the kids might, they might come in the morning and they might be feeling in survival fight flight. So we know that. So we help them to get calm before they start to learn. So we're using this. This would be a great thing to do at home. And again, it just lets kids share how they're sensing and feeling in their bodies. And one of the things that I want to share with you tonight is that right here in this pink area, this is where the brain is functioning from the amygdala. And this is where we go into full on alarm and we can't think clearly. We can't reason. Our emotions are so elevated. And this is the part of the brain where sometimes we as parents meet our kids in discipline and it never works. We've got to wait till everybody is back into the prefrontal cortex. So I want to share with you that as babies come into the world, they know how to get calm. And if they're exposed to caregivers who hold them and touch them and rock them and give them warmth, then they are able to share that with others. These are my sister's brand new grandchildren. And this was taken when Brooks on the left and Avery on the right were 8 weeks old. And Avery on the right was so dysregulated and she was so rough and screaming and hysterical that Laura, the mother, just had to lay her down. Laura had to go get 3 deep breaths. She had to put her down. And as she laid Avery down, you can see Brooks looking at her, and he reached over and he grabbed her hand. And she immediately got calm. And so I share this because this is what we, even as babies, are capable of doing. And our brains are built for resilience. I don't care what type of trauma you've gone through. I don't care if you're 50 years old, 30 years old, 10 years old, 70 years old. It doesn't matter if you have an ACE score, if you've had 10 adversities in your life. Your brain is built to do this. Your brain knows how to heal and repair. And that is such good news for us as parents, and it's good news for human beings. But you've got to be aware of what's happening beneath the way you feel to start repairing. So I think I love this because this really shows that even as an adult, this dad or this caregiver has a historic or a very hysterical child, and you can see that he begins to take deep breaths, maybe some humming, and the baby then begins to calm. And this is called relational regulation, and it happens through our facial expression and our tone of voice, and it happens through that emotionally available, safe, stable place that we can give our children. And usually it happens with no words. So I want to skip a couple of slides because I want to make sure that we hit everything. One of the things I want you to think about, I'm thinking about this as a mom, and I'm thinking about this as a teacher. And one of the things I want you to think about tonight is when you change your language, you change your perspective. When you change your perspective, you change your biology. What if we replace the word consequences with experiences? What if we started thinking about, instead of consequences, what if as a mom or a caregiver or a dad or a grandmother or a caregiver, what if we started thinking about experiences? So let me give you some examples. Here's the difference. Take a look at how these sound differently. What consequences does Andrew need to make sure he makes curfew? Now look to the right. What experiences does Andrew need to ensure he makes curfew? Let's look at consequences again. What consequences does Jordan need so she will get her work turned in on time? What experiences does Jordan need so she will get her work turned in? What consequences does Will need to not throw a fit every time we begin a new transition? What experiences does Will need to not throw a fit every time we transition? So I want you to think about this because experiences are that's what builds our brains. And oftentimes we as adults, we parent the way we were parented and the way our parents were parented and the way they were parented. And we don't stop and think that the science now is sharing with us that oftentimes when we are parenting or disciplining, that behavior management is not about our own children, it's about us. we lead the way with this. We are modeling those behaviors that we want to see from our children. So this is really exciting to share with you tonight. 93% of our communication is nonverbal. So I want you to think about that. It's in our tone of voice, and it's in our facial expression, and it's in our gestures, and it's in our posture. And we can calm a child, or we can unintentionally escalate them by our tone. Because kids who have gone through significant adversity, kids who are feeling anxious and rough, they don't care what your words are. In fact, they don't even hear your words. They're listening to your tone of voice. And they are asking themselves, am I safe? Now, they're not doing that consciously, but they are literally reading your face, listening to your voice, and watching how you gesture and posture. And that's why there's something that you carry inside of you every single moment of the day, as a parent, as a grandparent, as a teacher, as a guardian, caregiver. You carry this with you, and this inside of you can calm a child, or it can literally escalate everybody. So guess what that is? And I'm going to give you 5 seconds, and then I'm going to show you the next slide. And it's your tone of voice. When you're rough, you parent roughly. When I'm rough, I parented Andrew, Sarah, and Reagan in rough ways. I got into the power struggle, I jumped into the conflict, and I've done it as a teacher. And what we know is that it takes that calm adult to calm a child. How do we do it? I am so excited to do this with you. And I'll show you some examples right now that we're doing in class. In Indiana sometimes, and even around the country when I travel, if you say meditation in the classroom, you know, people get funny about that because they think meditation is religious, and it's not. When we meditate, we're actually focusing our attention on one thing. And when you focus your attention on your breath, or on a taste, or on a sound, or a visualization, then you give your cortex a good workout. It's called priming the brain for learning. And as a family, or as a parent, this is something that I would have put into our routines every day, several times a day. If we could have, and your enthusiasm and you doing it with them is going to make all the difference in the world. It's starting out with 3 deep breaths. It's starting out with 5 breaths. And then we work up to maybe focusing on a taste together. We might put a grape in our mouth and focus on the taste. There's a sound, maybe we ring a chime. We use a visualization. This little guy loved that. You guys have seen those sequined pillows and purses and jeans, and this felt calming. So as he would breathe, he would run his hands back and forth over this pillow. And I'll show you some focused attention practices that we're doing at school. And in fact, I'm going to do one with you right now. So I'm gonna stop one. So if everybody could sit up nice and tall. First, I'm gonna wake you up because this is this is late, and we're at the end of this presentation. So I'm gonna skip back over here. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna wake you up first. So this is gonna wake up your brain, and then we'll do a focused attention practice. So right now, everybody make a peace sign and an okay sign. This is what we're doing. The kids are practicing at school. I know, you guys look tired. I promise you I'm gonna be done soon. All right, you ready? Now, as fast as you can, switch and go back and forth as fast as you can. You should really be struggling, so don't be embarrassed. This is really hard to do. And the reason I can do this is because I do it all the time. So we do this as like a family, we challenge each other. So the kids were so frustrated when they couldn't do it, but then they saw themselves improve. So hopefully I just kind of woke you up a little bit. And this woke up the brainstem. When we do a brain interval, it wakes up the brainstem and it just kind of keeps us engaged because being talked at kind of lulls you to sleep. So what I'd like for you to do right now is I want you to put your left hand, excuse me, under your right arm and take your right hand and put it on your shoulder. So you're really just, you know, holding yourself and you're really, and so as you do this, and you can turn off your camera while we do this together if you want to. I'm going to leave mine on. I just want you to take 4 or 5 deep breaths. And as you breathe in, give yourself just a little squeeze and see if you can just close your eyes and exhale maybe a couple of exhales longer. And I'll do it just, you know, maybe 4 or 5 deep breaths together. So make sure your exhale's a little longer and just take right now for yourself, just take 4 or 5 deep breaths. And one more deep, deep breath. And so we ask the kids how that felt to them. We get feedback from them and we share with them, you know, what's happening in their brains. We don't just do it. We just, we say, this is calming the limbic system in your brain. And when you extend your breath, your blood pressure lowers, your heart rate lowers, and you start to feel better. So we really give our kids the science. And I will send, those of you who want it, I can send it to Dana. We have brand new focused attention practices, and I can send some for parents. So you have a lot of ideas. So I'll send some resources after tonight so you can have that. I won't just leave you hanging after this evening. So I'll go ahead and share. Let me see what time it is. Okay, so I do want to make sure we've got time for questions. Let me go back and share this real quickly. So again, this is why we do focused attention practices, and we do this with our 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds. They know how to take a deep breath. We give ourselves, this is a great thing to do at home. We're using hand sanitizer. So today I sprayed hand sanitizer on all the kids, and we gave ourselves a hand massage, and you start at your wrist. And this is a great thing to do, you know, a couple of times throughout the day. If your kids are feeling really anxious, if they're feeling irritable, maybe a little lotion at home. We can't use the lotion. We're using hand sanitizer at school, but just feeling, we have the kids take some deep breaths and just really give themselves, or you could give your child a hand massage. You know, that would be a really great way to get them calm. Running your hands under warm water can calm you. When you need to take some space and time, putting your hands on your cheeks or putting your hands on your child's cheeks can activate the parasympathetic nervous system. Giving yourself a hug, like we just did, can calm and activate the parasympathetic nervous system. So I'm going to keep going. We've talked about brain intervals. This is what I'll send to you. So these are some focused attention practices that you can do at home with your kids and some brain intervals. And so one of the things that I wanted to show you what we're doing at Harrison Hill. The kids are making these brains, and we're talking about what brain and body state that we're in. So we're having a lot of fun with this week. And this is something, again, I just got pieces of, you know, just paper and poster board, and the kids are just decorating them. And I just wanted to show you right here, we're doing a focused attention practice together. So this is a 3rd grade classroom with Mrs. Kirkland. And so I'm going in twice a week, and they're seeing short videos. We rubbed our hands together to make them really, really hot. I've been doing this for like 12 years. And then they were learning about sensations, and so they could feel the tingling in their hands. I want to talk to you a little bit about middle and high school in these last couple of minutes. This shows how the brain develops. So you can see this is the newborn brain. This is the greatest time of brain development happens in the first 1,000 days of life. That's when our brain is so sticky. And so whatever experiences that child has had in those first 2 years can literally stick to the brain and really can affect them at 5 years old and 10 years old and 15 years old. But knowing that, and knowing that we need safety and we need connection can actually provide new experiences to really overcome some of those experiences where they might have been missing connection, or they might have been missing that attachment. This is 4th, 5th grade right here. And starting at about 4th or 5th grade, we move into the second greatest time of brain development. And this is adolescent development. And this is where most of us, I wish I had known this as a mom. Sometimes our kids in upper elementary, 5th, 6th grade, all the way through high school, we think, who are you? What has happened to my child? I don't recognize these behaviors. Their interests change, their passions change, but some really cool things happen during this time. The adolescent brain is actually getting ready for adulthood. And it's an amazing time. And we misunderstand that time. I feel like I missed out on the opportunities with my kids because I really, I didn't understand such a change in behaviors. But the brain starting in upper elementary and middle school is really pruning away connections it's no longer needing, and it's wiring up for efficiency and for specialization into adulthood, for young adulthood. So it is the brain's job to question authority. That's what adolescents do. So don't get worried about that. That's what they do. They're social, and they're constantly seeing life through the lens of their peers. That's what that adolescent brain is supposed to do. And the adolescent brain is hypersensitive to reward and to feedback. Every child will choose to look misbehaved before they look stupid in front of their peers. And I want you to understand that as caregivers. Every child will choose to look ornery and to look rough before they look stupid. And what we now understand is that adolescent brain reads our facial expression in very negative ways. It has a negative bias. We all have a negative bias, but that adolescent brain is really, and again, I'm talking 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, freshman, sophomore, junior, all the way through high school. So we share this with the kids. Your prefrontal cortex does not finish developing until you're in your late 20s or early 30s. And that we liken that to Spock. And then the limbic system is like Captain Kirk. So this is a special time, and it's a time where we can really make connections with our students or with our children if we really understand what's happening. So some of the ways we can do that are through practices. We do a brain scavenger hunt. That would be so, think about that, do it as a family. We talk about neuroplasticity, and that's the brain's fabulous ability to change in every moment. Your brains after this Zoom meeting will not be the same brain that you brought to the meeting at 6:30. And neuroplasticity is the best news for us as parents. It says every experience structurally and functionally changes the brain. So I have right here, we do scavenger hunts, and what reminds me of neuroplasticity, you could do this at home. Find something in the house that reminds you of neuroplasticity. I have hair scrunches, and so I always pull these up, and I share this with the kids. The kids know I always pull my hair up or put it down. So this reminds me because it can change shape. It bends. I can make it in different shapes. What is something that calms you? Is there something in your home right now? Or could you draw a picture of something that helps you to feel calm? What stresses you out at home? I can tell you what stresses me out right now is the television. I know that's a stressor for me right now, the news. What helps you to feel smart and helps you to feel in the flow and helps you, like when you're doing something you love and time passes quickly? What would that be? Do some of you have projects you work on, or listening to music when you've got, and really, I mean, none of us have a lot of spare time right now. I know that. I know that. So we find or we draw or we write about a memory. I cannot emphasize how important it is to draw, to do dual stories with your kids. You know, maybe start like you have a blank piece of paper and you make a shape and they add a shape. Then you make another shape and they add a shape. And you do this for 2 minutes without talking and see what the two of you create. That's a great bedtime ritual. That's a great thing to do if your kids are starting to get rough, or you could start a story and they could add to the story, and then you can add and they can add. This is connection. And so when, and this sometimes is a great distraction when kids are getting rough. So we did this with our 5th grade students, and it's really interesting. We had the kids, if you had a wise self, who would that wise self be? So as a parent tonight, who is your wise self? And what would your wise self say to you to comfort you in this time? What would your wise self look like? Would it be an animal? Would it be a relative? Would it be just some, like, are you making that up? Would it be a character you could make up? What comforting words would your wise self say to you? This would be a great family, something to do, just to get everyone calm and everyone connected. Our 5th graders did this, and I love this. This 5th grade student did, his wise self was his dad. And so he drew a picture of his dad. And again, we had, I don't think I put the other one in here. We had another person draw part person, part unicorn, part rooster. And then what comforting words would your wise self tell you? So this is something I want to make sure that you have before you leave tonight. During COVID, we had families that created amygdala first aid stations in their house for kids. And it doesn't have to be fancy at all. It could be just even, we're doing this in school. We're creating amygdala first aid stations. And these are places where kids can go and calm. And they've got things in that area that calm them. I don't care if you've got 3-year-olds or 18-year-olds. It feels good to have a space that's your own. And even if they don't have a space, they could have a bucket. So it would be really cool to create just that amygdala first aid, so that and you teach the kids this ahead of time. And you say, you know what, before you say something you don't mean, before you do something that you're going to regret later, go color it, go draw it. We use, I thought I had it with me, but I've got these, soft pieces of yarn that the kids love. I mean, just something they can hold in their hands, maybe something that feels weighted, just even carrying around, or just taking a brisk walk, shooting baskets. It doesn't even have to be, in a bucket. So I want to share tonight the importance of touch points. And I do want to share with you, and many of you who have heard me speak before have heard this before, but our oldest son, Andrew, went through a lot of anxiety in middle school and high school. He was anxious even out of the womb. I mean, we really had a really difficult time parenting Andrew. He's the oldest of 3. And it was really a hard time as a mom when he was at Fall Creek Valley and went into Lawrence Central High School. And at that time, his behaviors changed. We saw him become very angry. We saw him cutting classes, skipping school, making horrible choices. And I want to share with you that a freshman teacher at Lawrence Central High School really changed everything for us several years ago. I was teaching at Marian University at the time. And we as a family, Andrew had been in counseling. I was grounding him, I was punishing him. And it was just a really hard time. And I was teaching at Marian one afternoon. And before I went into class, I got an email, and I knew it was from Lawrence Township. And in that email, in the subject line, it said Andrew in action. And I thought to myself, do I open this now or do I wait? And I opened it because I was so concerned. I was so worried. And in this email, Mr. Brandon Pickett, who was Andrew's freshman Spanish teacher at LC, wrote to us. And he wrote, "Dear Dr. Desautels, I want you to know that Andrew finished his project today. He had a smile on his face during our class period, and he was walking around and helping some of the other groups." And then at the very end of the email, he wrote, "Please let me know how I may serve you in the days and weeks to come." And I want to tell all of you tonight, as a mom, as a parent, that email and that last question meant everything to me and to Andrew. Andrew worked so hard for Brandon Pickett that semester. He got an A in that class. He got D's and F's and everything else. He barely made it through LC, barely graduated because of the trauma and adversity that he was going through. But Brandon Pickett connected with Andrew. And my graduate students at Marion, we sat down together, a few of us, and we looked at that question, how may I serve you? And we developed these 3 questions. And I want to share with you tonight as parents or caregivers. When you start to get irritated and agitated, when you start to feel like you are going to blow up, if you can get calm and you can take those deep breaths and you can genuinely turn to your child or turn to your teen and say, just tell me what you need right now. How can I help? Just tell me what you need. What can we do to make this better together? It literally downregulates negative emotion and it upregulates hope and positive emotion. And those 3 questions distract the brain and the body, and we move from a state of protection to a state of growth. And I'm using those questions even with my adult children today. When Sarah calls me, when Reagan needs me, if Andrew still needs me, what do you need, sweetie? How can I help? And what can we do to make this better? So as we end tonight, I knew I would run out of time, but I want to thank you so much. This is a new book that I have coming out. It is really for parents as much as it is for educators. And it's about rewiring our perceptions of discipline, connections over compliance. So I want to make sure we've got 5 minutes. Please connect with me if you would like to on social media. You can follow me on Facebook, on Twitter. My Butler email is right there, so feel free to email me. I have a website, Revelations in Education. And if you use Twitter, you can follow me on Twitter, but please connect with me because I'm always sharing the practices, things that are going well, things that didn't go well. And I want to make sure that, that we stay connected. So if you need to leave, please feel free. We are finished tonight, but I would love to take 5 or 6 minutes and I would love to answer any questions that you have. So I can look in the chat. And again, please unmute yourself if there's something that you want to ask before you need to log off, because I'm just kind of looking. Okay, I'll put up the last slide again. Let me put up that last slide. So while I'm doing that, does anybody have any questions that you want to ask? Because your question is probably somebody else's. Can you see that? Can you see the slide?
No.
Okay. Yeah, so feel free, just take a picture of it.
No.
Oh, you can't see it? Did I not share it? Let me share, hold on, let me just share. Okay, so I think you can see it now. So there's the last slide. Would anyone like to unmute and share something?
I have a question.
Yes.
I would
Yeah.
like to know if you have the book in Spanish version, because my English is not good, but I would love to read it.
Yeah, so the book and the book is not out yet. It's coming out this winter or late fall. So I'm sorry I didn't say that. We have Eyes Are Never Quiet that's out, and I don't believe, I would love for it to be in Spanish. If that's what you asked, I would love for that too. I would love for that.
Is any book of you
So
in
there
Spanish
is,
version?
yeah, so my colleague, Dr. Mona Delahook, has a book too, and I need to check with her. And I believe it's called Beyond Behaviors, and I think hers is in Spanish. And she's a clinical therapist, so we are actually going to be doing a presentation together, probably in December. But I will look into that. So please, yeah, please. It's called Beyond Behaviors, and that may be in Spanish.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Thank you.
And does anybody else want to unmute before you leave? I know it's been a long night. I can't thank you enough for joining me. I mean, I'm just in awe at the people that I will send resources to Dana. And you're welcome to email me personally if there's something that you want me to, to help you with or to go into more detail. And just looking to see.
I have a question too.
Yes.
Is this recording to watch later? Because I missed the first part.
Yes, it's recorded. Thank you for reminding me. I think it stops on its own, but yes, it's been recorded.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So a couple of the questions are, what is a way for middle school students to feel more relaxed? Everything that we talked about tonight is for elementary, middle, and high school students. Those focused attention practices are very calming. We know exercise and movement can calm. Anytime you can use art, just letting kids doodle, keeping a journal, drawing. Anytime we can invite them to share how they're feeling, let them track their brain state, talk about that, what's in their bellies. So I will send you a lot of practices and strategies. And if you go to my website, I have so many things for parents on my website. It's called revelationsineducation.com. And it was on the last page. So anyway, thank you guys so much. I've loved being with you. And we can certainly, if this is something you would like to do again, please let Lawrence Township know, and we'll keep going with more practices and more strategies. So thank you all so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Where
you.
are we going to be able to see the recording?
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank
So
you.
Thank you.
I think the recording, Dana she has, I think, a list of episodes, so she'll have the recording.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks again.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Trish, for helping me too.
I tried, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Ahora sí, ya pesco.